That long.
Oh my!
All right.
I'm looking forward to pictures.
All right, at this time, I would ask you all to take your seats and rein in your conversations, please. We'll call this meeting to order. Val, please call the roll.
Commissioner Penny?
Here.
Commissioner Curry?
Here.
Commissioner Danio?
Here.
Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
Mayor Villa?
Here. At this time, I would ask everybody to please rise for the invocation led by Vice Mayor Curry, and also continue standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Lord, we are meeting tonight to conduct matters of business. Guide our hearts and our minds in the spirit of fairness, right thought, and speech. Impart your supreme wisdom upon our activities so that our affairs may reach a successful conclusion. Thank you for being our source of guidance tonight. In your name I pray, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, at this time, we'll jump on down to the public comments. This is the audience's opportunity to address the commission on anything that's not on our regular agenda tonight. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the commission? Seeing none, we'll close public comments, and we will move to, we don't have the approval of the minutes this month, or this meeting, so we'll move on down to the consent agenda, items 1 through 9. The action proposed is stated for each item on the consent agenda. Unless a city commissioner removes an item from the consent agenda, no discussion on individual items will occur, and a single motion will approve all items. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on any item on the consent agenda? Seeing none, we'll close public participation. Is there any commissioner that would like to remove an item on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. No discussion is needed. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Now moving down to our regular agenda. Resolution 2019-R-69.
Resolution 2019-R-69 by title only for first and only reading. A resolution of the City Commission of City Holly Hill, Florida, authorizing the city manager to piggyback Lake County contract number 16-0214 with Leesburg Concrete Company, Inc. to provide and install precast restrooms at Ross Point Park, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
Thank you, Scott.
Yes.
Mr. Forte, would you like to?
Yeah, this is on the regular agenda. I had originally had it on the consent agenda. And this is an item that we had in the budget for a couple of years, and we delayed it due to the hurricanes, and we had to rearrange some dollars. So what we have is a piggyback contract to install restrooms at the Ross Point Park, which is at the end of near 6th Street and Riverside Drive. And originally I was pushing this restroom forward because I was under the impression that originally this restroom was installed using ECHO funds. And with the ECHO funds, you have to guarantee the item to be there for, I think at the time, probably 40 years. Well, then I found out that it wasn't installed with ECHO funds. So my motivation to really comply with ECHO is really not there anymore. So now it comes down to, we put it in the budget, there were restrooms there, and prior to me leaving in 2008, I wasn't really aware of much problems that were occurring at that park. Well, somewhere between 2008 and 2013, apparently there were some issues over there with some inappropriate activity taking place in the restrooms, and the previous a manager that was here during my gap time removed the building. They tore the buildings down. And from what I understand is the commission was not aware that the buildings were coming down. They were informed of that after the fact. So a couple of commissioners and a certain radio host were pushing to get those restrooms put back in. So again, the motivation was compliance with the ECHO grant. So now it came up, and as I was doing my one-on-one briefings with each of you, there was some concern raised by some of you as to why are we putting the bathrooms back there? Is there a demand? And from my perspective, nobody's contacted me really. You know, I could probably count on one hand the number of people who said, you know, why isn't there a bathroom there? And we need one. Is it a good use of an estimated $100,000 to construct the bathrooms plus all of the concrete and piping that needs to go along with that? So I kind of leave it open for your discussion. Some of you were here during the time when those restrooms were removed. Some of you were not. So I'm going to look to your guidance to see which direction the commission wants to go in either going forward with these bathrooms, it's in the budget, or determining to not go forward. The deputy chief is here. I did ask him, and this is only if you want, I did ask him to pull any reports that they may have had out of there. He has firsthand knowledge of what the conditions were prior to them being torn down, so he has more information than I even do about the conditions. So if you would like him to give you information, he certainly can, but I think you should probably maybe have a discussion first and then determine if you need that information.
Yeah, I believe you're right there, unless a commissioner right now would like to hear from the deputy chief.
Actually, I would.
Okay.
I was actually one of the...
Now or during discussion?
It doesn't matter to me.
Okay.
We could do it either way.
Go ahead, sorry.
I was one of those commissioners that was concerned because it was during my first 1 or 2 years, so it was either 2012 or 13, I can't remember the exact year, that yes, we were blindsided by, wow, the restrooms were turned down. I was getting all kinds of emails. I'm like, what are you talking about? But I'm interested to hear those stats because I am concerned about little kids playing at that playground, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, that can't hold their bladder. I understand we have one down here at Sunrise Park, and then there may be a restroom somewhere down the way they can use. But if they're there playing, I'm sorry, a 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old kid can't hold their bladder. So I'm interested in hearing those stats.
You do, Commissioner, you do have restrooms at Sunrise Park and restrooms at 2nd Street Park. I would describe Ross Point Park as a neighborhood park rather than a semi-regional park. So typically with a neighborhood park, we have several neighborhood parks, and those are the kind of parks where, as a parent or a grandparent, you might say, all right, kids, we're going to the park, hit the bathrooms, and then we'll go, and then 20 minutes later,
Right.
you're like, all right, we're going home. But I understand what your concern is, so we'll...
I would just be interested in hearing the stats to see where my mind travels then.
Do you want to
So-
finish, Mr. Forte, with your summary before we
No,
bring
I'm,
him up?
I'm,
Okay.
I'm through, I'm just waiting to see if...
Deputy Chief, if you'd please come to the dais. And just state your name and position for the record.
Yes, sir. Deputy Chief Miller, Holly Hill Police Department. So what we did was an analytical report of total calls for service for 2017, 2018, 2019
Now, did you break these down by year or overall?
per year.
Okay.
What were those years?
2017, 2018, 2019 year to date.
But
Bathrooms weren't there.
yeah, I was going to say.
No, I'm only giving you the calls for service back for the last 3 years.
I think what happened is the system doesn't have the data.
Correct. We can't go
Okay.
back to 2007, 8, 9, those type.
Is that because it's our old system and not the
2000
current CAD?
Part of 2012 was post.
Jeff, you were here though in
track.
those years.
Oh, yes.
He's-
Well, you have firsthand knowledge of
Yeah, why don't you
general
tell us
conditions there.
when they were there?
Statistics aren't going to do us
Yeah,
any
the
good.
stats aren't going to do me any good.
Right,
so-
that's what I was thinking. You know, all I can tell you is that they were single stall bathrooms. Correct me, they were several stall bathrooms. You went into it, you had 2 urinals, possibly 3, definitely 2, and then you had a partitioned bathroom, speaking on the men's side. And we had a lot of activity of suspicious behavior and rude and crude behavior going on in the bathroom. It was not a single stall.
Thank you for the PC explanation.
In other words, sexual activity that is not permitted.
Correct.
Okay.
And some drug use, but
Okay.
mostly sexual activity.
And do we still have issues in that park? I mean, maybe not with a lot of,
Nothing to the magnitude of what went on there. There has been reports that it occasionally goes on out at the dock, but that is very limited information, or actually limited reports that we have had.
I think that's been going on for years at the dock, though, because I have firsthand knowledge that someone worked that.
Whoa, don't say that.
I said worked it. Sorry, honey.
Are there any other questions for Deputy Chief?
Could I ask you one? So what you're trying to say is that when the restrooms left, the problem left? Is that what you're saying? You say now there's no activity?
Due to the design of the bathroom, it helped the situation dramatically by them being removed.
Commissioner?
Were there any, or not were there, but are there any other city bathrooms that have kind of like proof sort of setups, like, in other words, to discourage this in the event bathrooms were there again?
If I think I understand your.
In other words, can we not have the same problem if we decide to put the bathrooms? Is there a way to deter that?
So Sunrise Park North has the single stall bathrooms. I'm not going to say it doesn't go on there, but we do not, I don't know I can't recall the last time we've had a report of sexual behavior going on inside a bathroom at Sunrise North.
And the proposed restrooms that are in the agenda are 2 single stall, no urinal in the men's, it's just a single commode, men's, women's, you walk in, single occupancy use, ADA compliant. So you don't have, we'll call it a gang of people that would be in a multi-stall,
Well, that's not exactly
If
true.
they're breaking the law anyways.
less likely,
Okay, maybe less likely.
less room.
Commissioner Daniel, you have the floor.
I just want to know, you know,
They could monitor, they could monitor one person going in and out rather than 3 people going in may not be suspicious. 3 people going into a single store, that's a little more suspicious.
Somebody might call
The
them.
doors on the proposed restrooms would face Riverside so that you can see the activity that would be going in and out rather than being hidden. So patrol cars driving by would have more visibility of the way the facility is laid out.
Commissioner Daniel.
I
you
was going to say a couple points with, you know, like, are we going to be able to do any kind of video surveillance? Do we have any kind of timed lights?
The doors will be put on a timer, so they'll be controlled where they'll be locked and unlocked remotely. So they'll basically be sunrise to sunset type of timing that is on there. That doesn't mean people won't put something over the latch that keeps it from locking, and then they could keep it open all night long and do whatever they want to do there.
How about video?
I wouldn't recommend video because we don't have anybody that's going to monitor it. Generally, the activity would occur at night, and you're not going to be able to see anything on the video. And we don't have video on any of our other restrooms, except we do have videos at Sunrise Park.
That's what I thought we had.
What did you, what did you say? I thought I heard you say something earlier about what is the basic startup cost of this? Not counting what it's going to cost to take care of it and maintain the problem. What is it going to cost to do it?
To install the restroom, about $85,000, plus the cost to do the slab and the water line and the sewer line. So you're roughly going to be at about $100,000. So now you have to decide if $100,000 is a good use of money for that bathroom.
Before you go further, does anyone else have any questions for our Deputy Chief? His legs might be
Well,
getting
I
tired.
might. Well, he's strong. Mr. Forte, and I don't know if his input's going to be needed, that's why I said he might. Under staff recommendations, they recommend approval. Now, was that before consideration was taken and memory was brought up about maybe an issue there law enforcement-wise?
No, I was aware of the problems that had happened. Not firsthand, because I wasn't aware of those issues happening prior to 2008 when I was here. I just don't recall that being the case. So maybe sometime between 2008 and 2013, an issue developed and became worse. So the staff recommendation was in there because of my concern with the ECHO grant.
Okay.
It wasn't until I was in my one-on-one briefing with the mayor, and I contacted Steve, who handles our ECHO grants administration, and he researched it for me, and he identified that it wasn't constructed using ECHO funds.
So then that would be the only reason you had staff approval was because of the ECHO.
I wouldn't say it's the only reason. It was my driving force was to be sure that we were putting back something that I thought was ECHO funded.
Well, I don't want to put him on the spot,
So he's paid for that.
but, okay, you get paid for that. Deputy Chief Miller, in your opinion, in your professional opinion, would you say that if those bathrooms were put back down there, that you would have an increase in calls in the nature of what we've been speaking about?
You know, I'm not trying to go around your question, but, you know,
Then don't.
I can't answer that. I can't say we will or we won't. I can tell you that in Sunrise Park North, you know, we don't have the call volume of that type of behavior.
Is that
As
because
we
those
did.
restrooms were changed to what they are
Yes.
today?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I can tell you, we don't have that
A
problem.
large part in
Right.
because of that. It may be other reasons, but,
Yes.
okay. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other yeah?
I don't have a question.
Any other questions for Deputy
I'll save
Chief?
it for comments.
Yeah, I was just gonna, real quick, when you say that north, is that
Sit down.
the geographical location with the strip center and more, I mean, the visibility on Ross Point isn't near as bright
I'm
and.
sorry.
The Sunrise, when you say there hasn't been that much activity, I look at Sunrise and I see a big bright park across the street from a set of stores and more activity than the Ross Point that's kind of tucked in the.
What I think, Commissioner, what you're trying to say is the more people that attend a park, the less likely you're going to have inappropriate activity because there's a lot of people there. They're
Well, and
monitoring
around, and the surrounding area.
the surrounding area. You know, we have a little bit of trouble down at the Second Street Park, and I'm trying to work with the residents down there to use the park more. That will keep other people out of those parks. It's not just here. People utilize public parks for this kind of activity in a lot of locations.
Understand.
So the more it's occupied by people that want to use the park for its intended purpose, the less likely you're going to have people using it for its unintended purposes.
Yep. Thank you, Deputy Chief.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Penny, did you want
I just want to add a couple things because Commissioner Curry and I were here there, and I believe
Yeah, I believe
Commissioner Johnson was our mayor at that time.
I remember it very well.
But I recall, and I should have let Jeff stay up there.
You can call him back
But
up.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I seem to recall that there were public websites and chat rooms and things highlighting these public restrooms in Holly Hill for illegal activity and undesirable activity to take place in that park because of the design of the restroom. And we've all gone to the League of Cities conventions, and you see there's big money in these restrooms because they're now designed as single stall, single person use. And I remember talking about this. I kind of joked and said, we need restroom there. There's kids playing there. Put a portalette. If you have to go, you will go in the portalette. It's not very comfortable, but you will go because it's available. But years ago, we made the restroom so comfortable that people would go in there, 5, 6 people into a 2-person restroom, and things were happening that we didn't want to happen. So that's a little of the history that I recall. And Mr. Forte said that he hasn't gotten any complaints about it. And I know this commission has taken a strong stance to improve our parks. What does it do to improve our parks if no one goes? And maybe we haven't had any complaints because nobody goes there. You don't take your kid there because you know there's no restroom. If I had a 3-year-old toddler, I wouldn't take him there, even though I live a block and a half away.
grandson or granddaughter?
Yeah, not yet, hopefully. But I think adding a restroom there is going to increase the presence there, increase the activity there. And like Mr. Forte said, the more eyes we have on this park, the less undesirable activity that's going to happen there. And what was happening, as I recall back in 2012-13, was it was a dark park, and the doors faced the river. You couldn't see who was going in and out of there. And a lot of bad stuff was happening. So I think a lot of thought has been put into this thing. we've been talking about it it's been in the budget, I think, for 3 years to do it, so. Just a little history.
And I'll just add, I brought it up either this budget go-around workshops or last year's, and asked why was it necessary in the budget, and the answer was because of ECHO funds. So we either build it or we send them,
Check.
we get a bill. So that was, I think, the primary driving force for us to get to that, and we were honestly too busy to get to it over the last few years. With that being said, I actually frequent this park a lot. We have a brand new park there, brand new equipment. It's very, very nice. I stop there a couple times a week. But Joe kind of hit it on the head by saying it's a neighborhood park, meaning I don't go there to picnic. I don't do anything like that. I stop by and get my kids to run out energy for 15 minutes. Let's get in the car, and we go. So we've never needed a bathroom there. I will state that. But I don't disagree with you, too, that a big goal of our commission is to push our parks forward. And so it's definitely not a bad thing to build this. So I honestly, I'm here to listen to the commission, and this is one of those issues where I'm really right on the fence of it, because when I look at the budget, since I've been in office, I haven't had one person ask me for a bathroom there, not one. And I don't know if any of you have been asked, please put a bathroom there, and you may have. I haven't.
I haven't asked you, but I've asked Mr. Forte about it a few times since he's come back, just so you know.
Okay, and it'd be inappropriate for you to ask.
That's right.
Me.
That's
Thank
why I
you
wanted
for
to
not
clear that
asking me. So, what I look at though is my primary driving force was the ECHO funding for this. Right? That's a no-brainer. We got to replace it. Now, with that off the table, I question if it's the best use of taxpayers' money to spend $100,000 for a project that we haven't really been asked for, and something that I don't think that we have to provide there. So I could see both sides of the issue. I kind of see where maybe a couple votes are. So if there's any other discussion to be had before we open it up to the audience participation, feel free.
Well, I know one thing for sure, there was a real problem when it was happening. I mean, a serious one. But I'm kind of on the edge like you're about it one way or the other. I hate to see them spend $100,000 to put in a bathroom when I'm sure you could build one a lot cheaper than that somehow or another. But, and maybe it's needed, maybe it's not. I don't know for sure. But I do know one thing for sure. Before they was taken down, there was a problem, believe me. It's a problem like I wouldn't even want to discuss.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Commissioner. At this time, are there any other questions from the commission? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and open this up to public participation. This is the audience's opportunity to address the commission on this item. By a show of hands, who would like to come speak to this item? Yes, ma'am. Just state your name and address for the record, please.
Camille Lingham, 334 and 336 Daytona Avenue. Didn't actually plan on talking about this, but I do remember back when and how bad that park was. They actually started putting chain across the entrance to keep people out at night, or at least cars. Personal view, as a neighborhood park, it does not need bathrooms. I'd rather see this money budgeted towards our police force, fire department. I think we'd be better off doing something like that.
Thank you very much, Camille. I saw another hand. Yes, right here.
Hi, Lynn Smith, 107 7th Street. So I heard you say that this money was put in the budget the last 3 years, but not used. So I don't understand really how that works. I guess it just sits in the overage or something.
It rolls over.
So my first question would be, what would you propose as a higher priority to do with this money? And probably that's nothing anybody's thought about yet. Or are there other higher priority projects that the money could better be used for?
And Mrs. Smith, we're going to take in all the questions and
Okay.
we'll answer at the end.
Secondly, I would like to say, as self-appointed citizens on patrol of the parks, that I cruise regularly several times a day. I can say that our police department has done a fine job of moving undesirables out of the parks. So for Sunrise North, hardly ever see any homeless people sleeping there anymore. And as far as Ross Point, when we go through there at night, I don't know that any homeless people are actually sleeping there. Sometimes you'll see them. Nobody's there for any extended period of time. And when I get up during the night, I can see the park, and very often there is a police car parked there, you know, whether it's for speeding or whatever else. I do agree with the woman who spoke before about, you know, if the park is supposed to close at 10 and there was the chain there, it's not getting put up. I don't know, for whatever reason, who can do it, whatever. But, I mean, that could be one thing to stop the cars from going through. So otherwise, I would say that, you know, if we all participated in patrolling the parks and informing the police department, we would have much less undesirables. And I can say, as far as when I see the maintenance people cleaning the bathrooms at Sunrise North in the morning, you could ask them, I guess, how disgusting they are. You know, I have seen what appears to be homeless people bringing in their little bag of supplies to clean themselves up. Not very often, and not as much as I used to. So I would say that I would be for a bathroom at the park for the reasons that you stated. We are trying to bring more people here. If we want to make it a family-oriented type thing, probably should have a bathroom there.
Thank you, Lynn. Yes.
Steve Smith, 1410 Riverside Drive. I'm glad to see that the bathroom is almost going to be put back at the park. Any park that has a playground, a picnic table, and a pier to fish off of like that, you would just assume that when you have to go to the bathroom, you don't have to hide behind a trash can or a tree. And it would improve our cultural direction of our city here to provide a place to put your waste other than behind a trash can or a tree. So I live next to a small neighborhood park and there is no bathroom, so I know what happens when they need to go to the bathroom and there isn't one. I can see it from my gazebo. So putting a bathroom there makes sense to me. And I walk up and down that street often. I'm very familiar with the bathroom at Riverside Park at 2nd Street. I'm very familiar with the bathroom at North Sunrise. And I like the locks on them. They're working. The bathrooms our maintenance help does a good job keeping them clean. And it would be a blessing to put one back at that park that deserves one. And if there was any more money in the budget, I'd pave that dirt driveway, that sandy driveway. It's been forever. It gets dry and the wind blows and then a lot of dust comes off of that unpaved driveway. But it's a pretty civilized place there, and we miss the bathroom there, and I'm glad to see it took, usually when you knock a bathroom down, the next one's going to start the next day. You're going to put it back. It's kind of strange. You knock a bathroom down and wait years, and you put a new playground in, and then years later after that, now it's coming to the bathroom. So it's kind of like, I know government's slow, but I'm just glad to see the bathroom coming back to town, and I think it'll improve our image to have a bathroom in a public park. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Yes, Mr. Legary.
Jim Legary, 342 Burley. I seem to remember quite a bit of conversation about the bathrooms before. I also seem to remember that the neighbors across the street were saying that it was blocking their view. I also remember that it was ordered by a city manager who was somewhat disrepute now to be torn down. I think the park ought to have a bathroom. And whatever we have to do to monitor that so it doesn't end up on Facebook or whatever, should be in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Legary. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to this item tonight? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public participation. And is there any further questions for staff from the commission? No? Do you have another?
No.
Question? No, I mean, I'm trying to kind of sponge all the information here.
Right. Well, then at this time, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion for approval for Resolution 2019 R69.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'm assuming you want discussion.
Yes, I do.
Yep.
Of course. First of all, I would like to just say, thank you all for your comments. I appreciate them. And they helped a little bit. They helped a lot. The bathrooms being Riverside Drive frontage, to me, makes a huge difference because the cops running up and down the road, the firefighters running up and down the road, us, our citizens that care, are all going to see. And if we see something unusual, we're going to call. That's kind of our training nowadays. No matter what it is, see something, say something, whether it's suspicious or not. There's going to be a bigger draw of families with children because I know that park. I've been around here a long time too, and I remember that park when I had my kid. Well, I still have my kids, but when they were little, I used to go there all the time and play. And I've seen over the years kids doing the same thing. Unfortunately, when that bathroom was taken from us, and Mr. Legary, I hope you're talking about conversation after it was taken from us because there was none before, at least not that I'm aware of. That was all done and handled and then told to us. But I think a lot more families would use that park if there was a bathroom for those little kids to be able to go to. Even if they're out there playing for 15 minutes, a half an hour, they're still going to have to possibly use the bathroom. They need somewhere to go. So people aren't going to go there if they know a bathroom's not there. The neighborhood park, it is a neighborhood park, but it also has fishing that everybody in this area, whether it's Holly Hill, Ormond, Daytona, enjoys. How can you go out there fishing? Because I used to do it when I was younger. How can you go fishing for 4 hours and not expect somebody to go to the bathroom? I mean, we're going to have people, well, we probably already do, going off the dock because there's no bathroom. And I'm not saying that's going to cure the problem of people going off the dock because there's always people that do that. One-person bathrooms, I think, is a lot better, like we have at Sunrise, because I believe that might help the problem, like Deputy Chief Miller said, this over here at Sunrise has done. And I think if the bathrooms are closed at sundown, like I think all of our other bathrooms are, correct, Mr. Forte?
They're on a set schedule that are all the same. I don't know
Yeah.
specifically.
So this could be done the same way, though.
Yeah, it would be in compliance with all the other ones.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're not going to leave it open all night long for everybody to go in and tear up and do what they'd like. It's going to be closed in the evening and opened in the morning, like the rest of our parks are done. I just think if we have a park that's that exposed to the public, we need to provide services to them, whether they've asked for it or not. That's part of what we do. They might not think they need it, but so they don't ask for it. But we need to provide services to our community. And this has been budgeted for. It's been gone over. I've asked Mr. Forte back when he first came back a couple of times. I've talked to him about it. I really haven't asked him about it, but I've talked to him about it. And I just think we need to go ahead and go forward with this. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. We'll go to the motion seconder, Commissioner Penny. you like to say anything?
I think you guys know how I feel about it, but just want to bring up a couple points to make sure the vote carries by at least 3 people. Is that, and I don't know, did we address all of the citizens' concerns? Because someone mentioned the gate and 10 o'clock closing, and Commissioner Curry touched on it. We have a lot of people that fish around here. And the problem with the old bathrooms, my opinion, is that they didn't self-lock. And so a janitor would come by and put the wire up. No cars could get in there, but people could just walk around it. And so a lot of the fishermen complained that they couldn't go fishing. So if you don't put the wire up, they can still go fishing, but where the problems were the bathrooms, now we have self-locking locks, which takes care of that, makes everybody happy. There is a lot of activity there. I know we said it's a neighborhood park, but there's a lot of people that come there and picnic on the weekends. In the spring and in the fall, you'll see people will come by and they'll just go by Kentucky Fried Chicken and have a big bucket of chicken, or they'll cook out there on the picnic tables. And lastly, you guys know I'm the numbers guy. If you go between 2nd Street and 11th Street, which is our 2 parks, right between 6 and 7 is a sweet spot where a bathroom should be. That's kind of where this park is. And we talked about kids having to go to the restroom, but there's a lot of people that walk. The best thing that this commission did in the last 20 years was complete that sidewalk, and it is used daily. And there's a lot of people that walk there. And if you're starting in the north end of town and walking to the south end of town, you might not make it to 2nd Street if you have
That's true.
to use the restroom. So it's right there in the middle. It makes sense. It was there before. And I think the design of the bathroom and the attention of our police force, the locking bathrooms, is going to take care of all the undesirable activity. So I wholeheartedly support it.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll go to Danielle. Commissioner?
I put a pros and cons list because that's kind of the way I'm wired. I mean, my skepticism had me kind of thinking, but I'm trying to think from a grandfather standpoint and a citizen standpoint. And, only because of some of the points brought out about the self-locking and the designs and everything else, is it going to benefit our city? I mean, with all those in place, probably, Do I want to, support something that's going to benefit my city even if I'm a skeptic? I'm supposed to, so I'm kind of on that stance, so.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Johnson, would you like to add anything?
Well, I just think well, one thing's for sure, we're losing the park side of Hollyland Park, so we need to have any other park we have, we need to be able to use it and have the families and kids to use it. And if that's what it takes for them to do it, I would be for it. I know we had a serious problem before, but like the deputy chief was saying, we're going to correct that problem with a different style restroom than what we had there before, which it was a serious problem with the way it was designed and the way people use it and all. But I think we should promote it as much as we could if it'll help the kids to come to the park and let people use the parks. And like I say, Hollyland Park is going to be for other use now, and they're not going to have it for a regular park. So I think it's a good thing. I think if it be monitored, and Holly Hill's come a long ways in the last few years, so I think things will be better with it.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just want to say before we take a vote, I think that our first and foremost job up here, all of us, is to listen. And I came tonight wanting to listen, to hear opinions, because I too could see pros and I could see cons. And I want to say, Commissioner Penny, you knocked it out of the park tonight. You really did. And so did you, Vice Mayor. To talk about the fishing that was brought up, that was something I don't fish. I don't think about that. But I know when you fish for an hour or two, and you need a place to go. I think at the end of the day, part of the problems that were there were due to not having what we have today with the locks. I think that as pointed out by Mrs. Smith, that our police force is doing a better job than we even give them credit for, and we give them a ton of credit. So that with, the automatic locks, the single stall aspect, the fact that it's facing Riverside Drive, I think that this is an improvement for our city. I may not use the bathrooms, but I'm not up here to vote for something that I'm going to use or not use. And I heard from the public today, and you're right, maybe they haven't asked for it because they haven't thought to ask for that. So I just want to say that I will be voting in the affirmative for that. So if there's anything else to add, we don't need to. I don't think we need to continue. So let's go ahead and call the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Move on to public hearings. Ordinance 2019-0-3022.
Ordinance number 2019-0-3022, by title only for second and final reading. An ordinance of the City of Holly Hill, Florida, amending the land development regulations by rezoning the parcel described in Exhibit A from MPUD Mixed Use Development District to MPUD Mixed Use Development District, providing for conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Before I let you go, Mr. Walker, is there any ex parte communication? Yes, Commissioner Penny.
I met with Ms. Ingham. She emailed me last week, and she came by my office yesterday, and we had some discussion about the project.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Any ex parte communication? No other. What we'll do is we're going to have a report from you, Mr. Walker, and then I want to bring up the applicant. If there's anything you would like to add and presentation, we'll go ahead and do that. Then we'll open it up to the commission questions and then public comment. Okay? So take it away.
Commissioners, Mayor. Just a quick recap. The applicant is requesting a rezone for approximately 5.4 acres. This is located on the northeast corner of Ridgewood Avenue and 3rd Street. And this is in order to develop the property as an affordable senior living or 55 and older community. The base residential density permitted by the Mixed Use 2 future land use is 20 dwelling units an acre, but the applicant is requesting a density bonus of 15 dwelling units per acre for a total of up to 35 dwelling units per acre. The bonus is requested based upon meeting the bonus criteria that's stated in the staff report. The differences between the existing and proposed PDs, as well as the surrounding zonings and land uses and a site analysis, are provided in your staff report. This request is consistent with the land development regulations of Holly Hill, as well as the city's comprehensive plan. There have been some changes since the meeting on September 24th, and the first one has to do with the PD agreement. It has been updated. The applicant has added language stating that they will provide a covered bus shelter. The preferred location that they have stated would be on Ridgewood Avenue. If by some reason or for some reason that site is not available, then they are proposing to put one on 3rd Street. The only reason that a bus shelter would not be built would be if for some reason Holly Hill said that they could not do so, or some other agency for some reason that had the authority said that they were not able to do that. The bus shelter is proposed to be placed on the applicant's property, and that is something that they have agreed to, which did come up at the meeting on the 24th. Another issue that came up had to do with the dumpster at Miriam Avenue, or that butts up against Miriam Avenue. The applicant would like to keep the dumpster in its current location, but they have agreed to more than double the buffer and landscaping between the back of the buffer and Miriam. And staff is fine with that, so it'll be at the commission's pleasure. The preliminary site plan has been updated to show that each building will have 86 units. There had been some discussion because the
Mayor, what happened to the 80 units, Brian?
there was
Did this change from last meeting?
Yes.
no, they had actually proposed 90 units, and then they were discussing 80, and
What I approved was 80 units.
right.
Where did this change?
Well, remember what you have is a land is a 35 units per acre.
Okay.
So at the last meeting, there were two documents that were conflicting. One had 80 units per building, the other had 90 units per building.
I thought we approved 80 units per building.
And what you're doing tonight, and this clarifies all the differences. So you've got, the size of the building isn't changing. You still have 7 stories.
I'm
And
not
now-
happy with that. Okay, go ahead.
And now you've got, and this Brian and I talked about today because we wanted clarification. So you've got a maximum of 86 units in the entire building, which doesn't change the size of the building, doesn't change the footprint of the building, and it's still within the maximum amount of units per acre that they can put on the property.
As much as I'd love to approve this project tonight, I will not approve it with it changed from what it was last meeting at 80 units. I'm not going to do it. But you can go ahead, Mr. Walker. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's,
Is it discussion or question?
Question.
Okay.
With the increase from 160 to 86 over 2 phases, there was I believe you might be getting to this, so I'm sorry. There's a ratio for parking that I think the applicant told us it was 0.75 industry-wide, but they were going to go to 0.80. And so if they increase the number of residential units, they would then, by default, increase the parking by that percentage, correct?
well, the parking that they propose is 0.8 spaces. Now, and that is per unit. So if they went with the 86 per building for a total of 172 units, that would be 138 spaces. But they're proposing 142 spaces. So they are proposing more than required based on the number of units they have. Now, understand, when they come to us with a plan development and they say, we're proposing this amount of parking, if it's less than what the code requires, one of the first things that staff does is says, you need to justify this number. If you're asking for less, you need to show me that this number is going to work. And one of the things that they did, because they do build all over, and they have many, many different buildings to pull from in terms of experience with regard to parking, they presented a study of over half a dozen of their developments. And they showed, based on that the parking that they're proposing is sufficient. We also look at what the industry standard is. When you have developments that are senior living and you have transportation nearby. In this case, there are 2 bus stops as it is, and they're proposing to put in the ADA compliant covered bus shelter. So based on what they've submitted and based on what we see in the industry, the parking that they're proposing is sufficient. And they are proposing more than what would be required for the number of units.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask one more question?
Yep.
I know we're considering the entire parcel as 5.6 acres.
5.4.
5.4. Do you know the difference, what's phase 1 as opposed to phase 2? Because I want to make sure there's enough acreage for phase 1.
They're roughly, it's roughly cut in half.
Okay.
Phase 1 would be an 86, or unless not approved, at 86 unit structure with 72 parking spaces. Phase 2 would be 86 with approximately 70 parking spaces provided on that.
And the applicant may answer this question if you don't know it. But I would imagine that although this is a cookie cutter project from another city, that this is similar footprint, but each city might demand different ratios as 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, based upon economic situations and disposable income. So the footprint of this entire building hasn't changed. It's just the different sizes of the apartments inside that building, correct? to go from 80 to 86, because they showed us the beautiful picture of what it was. They just didn't show us the inside walls,
Right,
right?
right. I mean, the difference between 80 and to add 6 more units, yes, I mean, obviously there would be some in.
There'd be more smaller units, more single units then.
There would, but they do have a limit as to how
Right, the
small
minimum
they can
size.
get, the minimum size.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Walker, can you please continue?
So that is basically my presentation. Keep in mind, the land use that they have that has been approved by the city is up to 35 dwelling units an acre. And they are asking for about 32 units, 32 units per acre. So they're asking for less than what the land use allows. They're providing sufficient parking, and although the land use says that they're allowed up to 35 dwelling units per acre, they have agreed to restrict themselves to 32 by the plan development agreement. So they won't be able to, if this is approved at 86, they won't be able to just come back and say, hey, we're going to put in now, 90 or 89. That would be a major amendment to this PD and would have to come back to this board. So in looking at it, staff has no objections to the density, and staff recommends that the City Commission adopt the ordinance enacting the rezone from MPUD, mixed use plan unit development, and MPUD, mixed use plan unit development, and approve the associated development agreement, including a density bonus of up to 15 dwelling units per acre, and the preliminary development plan for approximately 5.4 acres for property located on the northeast corner of Ridgewood Avenue and 3rd Street.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Commissioner Penny had another question.
One more question, Brian. I understand the land use allows them to have 35, and by the site plan putting a maximum of 86 and 86, they have limited themselves to 32 units per acre. Is there any reason we wouldn't just change it from 35 to 32 in the agreement to just kind of double down, make the citizens a little more secure that they can't just come back later and because they got 35, they gave us that bite, they're shaking their head yes back there.
Yeah. Okay. Good question, Commissioner.
We can update it, but even if we didn't change that, they wouldn't be able to just come back without a major amendment.
Because it would be an MPD.
It's based on the
Well, Brian, let me ask
preliminary.
you, would it be a major amendment, or would that be considered a minor amendment if the land use allowed 35 units per acre and they wanted to go from 86 to 90? Would that be a major, or would that be a minor?
It would be major.
It'd be a major.
It would have to come back to, yes, density changes are major.
Yeah, and that's what I was explaining to Commissioner Penny Curry.
That's Penny.
I go by full names, Commissioner Penny
That's why I
Curry.
call her Vice Mayor. It's easier. I don't get you confused.
That if we could agree to locking in the units per acre at 32 units per acre, that would assure that they wouldn't increase beyond the 86, to not even give them the opportunity to come back to do an amendment to get to anything beyond that.
Right, and we'll see if
They can still ask.
They can ask.
Yeah, they can
Yeah,
still.
they can ask, but.
Okay, hold on. So we'll see if the developer's open to that. But before you go, I just wanted to clarify something. So even with the 86, the original foot plan of the exterior is the same.
Correct.
Correct.
Here's
And
Mayor.
so
Right?
Here's
And
how
height
you.
is the same, right?
I'm sorry?
The height is the same.
Height's the same.
Height's the same.
Height has not changed in the
Here's what you need to
building
think about, and I haven't talked to them about this to know how many one-bedroom, two-bedroom, or three-bedroom units there are. So if they had, for example,
Right.
10 units on the floor, and now they went to
Right.
12 units on every other floor because they went to a two-bedroom rather than a three-bedroom.
Right.
That's where the footprint, that's where the interior change.
And so my follow-up question, which would probably go more towards you, is the footprint's not changing. What 90% of people are going to see and deal with is the same exact thing. It would be in my thought process to add 6 more. That would actually increase tax value Am I right?
I don't know how the property appraiser taxes these
That's
things. and
where I'm thinking. So I'm thinking it's even better for the city is where I'm going with
I
that.
think the
So
value is the value.
Then
Did
you're
you-
gonna put too much on the property, in my opinion, but I want to speak to the developer.
yeah, we're gonna have him come up.
Okay.
And, so thank you, Mr. Walker. Any other questions for Mr. Walker or staff?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. We may have to call you back up. So would the applicant like to please
And
come
I
to
will
the-
be nice, I promise.
to the
I've had a
dais.
second to calm down. And
Before
I may have jumped too quick, so I'm sorry.
Vice Mayor, before we do that,
Fine, I just want to apologize to him for getting a little upset.
please state your name and who you are for the record, and then you can go ahead and go into a presentation if you want, or just jump into questions. So,
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Michael Schnapps-Tyler with Cobb Cole, 149 South Ridgewood Avenue in Daytona Beach. Since the questions have been asked, I think it's better just to jump into that. To start with Commissioner Penny's question, the buildings we showed you were actually based on 90 units within them. So the building footprint you see here, the 86 units is actually smaller than what we know can be built out there. Going back to what staff and the manager had said, at 35 units an acre and 5.4 acres at the site, you could conceivably build up to 189 units. But again, our site plan that has been presented here does show the 86 in each for 172. And then taking a step back compared to what the current entitlements on the property are for, you've got a much, much more denser project that could conceivably be built today without any change in land use or zoning on the property, that also has commercial on top of it, which adds to the parking count and all that. And it's a plan that at the last meeting, staff said actually might even be inconsistent with the comp plan. So, the goal behind a lot of this is to bring this into compliance with your comprehensive plan, make it all consistent. And again, all the standards that are in the development agreement, the setbacks, the parking requirements, the minimum unit size does not change at all. Regardless of whether there's 86 units or 80 units, there's still going to be a minimum size for the units. I believe it's 534 is the minimum.
574.
574, yep. Has to be there, regardless of whether there's 86 or 80 units. What this just allows the developer to do is have a little bit of flexibility in the tax credit process with the state. They take the number of units into account when deciding whether to award the project tax credits or not. They look at the cost of construction, and that's where a lot of that comes into play. But again, it's going to meet the parking, it's going to meet the setbacks, it's going to meet the criteria that's all in the code. And happy to answer any questions that you do have. I do have a PowerPoint. I do want to thank Brian for bringing up some of the changes that came out of the last meeting. And maybe if I could just jump to the last 2 slides.
Yep.
Because I think you saw a lot of it the last time we were here.
just give Val a second to get there.
And we can go back to anything later in the process, but those are the buildings. We can go, all the way maybe to the second to last, that one, yep. So Brian had mentioned the bus shelter. Just to reiterate what he said, it's going to be on the actual footprint of the property, not in the right-of-way. It's going to be covered. The primary location, the location that we prefer, would be right across from the existing bus station on Ridgewood. If for some reason Votran will not approve it, or for some reason we can't get through that process here at the city, we'd propose it closer to the southern boundary along 3rd Street as a way to make sure it works. The dumpster, just to clarify, it's in the PD agreement. The garbage is actually done through a compactor that's in the building. And then that garbage is compacted, and then on the day of pickup, that dumpster is brought out to that location. So there is no activity going on the property in those locations until garbage day. The trash is compacted within the building. The staff rolls the dumpster out to the pickup location. It gets picked up, and it gets wheeled back into the building. So it is not an activity that we think is a nuisance or one that's going to be disruptive. We have some language in the PD that limits when that dumpster can be physically put in that location. It can't be there overnight. It's only on pickup days. It's going to be walled in. We specified the height of the wall in the PD agreement at 6 feet. It's masonry. It's going to match the building itself, the exterior. It's going to have gates along the front. And then as staff mentioned, we're doubling the buffer buy those as well. So instead of 5, it's 10, and on the site plan, we actually measured it out. Looks like in some places it'll actually be 12 feet. So again, just to help, ease some of those concerns from the last meeting, we think it's a good plan for that compactor system. It's one that works really well at their other sites. And it's one that we don't think will be disruptive. I think it's actually the least disruptive way of having a dumpster a site can have. So again, I can go through some of the other stuff we saw last time. I know there's some folks here tonight that weren't here the last time, but we're here at your pleasure. We do have the planning board and staff recommendation for approval. And happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. So we'll start off with Commissioner Penny.
Just one concern that keeps coming up from the community is parking. That we want you to be hugely successful. We want you to be 100% occupied. But we have a very large condominium complex in our area. Similar situation. And the number one complaint I get there's no place to park. You buy a 3-bedroom apartment and you get 1 parking space. The concern is that people will start stacking down 3rd Street, parking on right-of-ways and stuff. I know you guys have got, 2,200 units around the country built, and you've done this a million times. How do we assure the residents that it's not going to be a huge problem?
And I think the answer to that is the phasing process. So you've got a 5.4 acre site that's roughly, divided in half. Because of the way the Florida housing process works, the 2 phases will not be built at the same time. It can't happen. So phase 1 will be open. Phase 1 will be leased. Phase 1 will have folks there, and we'll still have over 3.7 vacant acres next to phase 2, where if there is an issue, the applicant will own the entire property and can work through that process. Obviously, it is not their goal or desire to create a parking issue at all. And so I think that there's some built-in flexibility there because of the phased process to work with staff, to work with, the community and you all to if we have to make some changes to phase 2 to accommodate it.
Right, and I wholeheartedly agree with you, is that the problem is going to be when phase 2 is built, if there ever is a problem. Because now you have all this vacant land, you could put another 20 parking spaces out there, call Jim Legary, he put some asphalt down, boom, you're in business. But how do we protect, because phase 2 will be a completely different project basically for the state of Florida for the tax credits, right? Mm-hmm. How do we assure that if this place goes crazy, and is there any way to restrict the density on phase 2 if phase 1 becomes a parking problem? If I was designing this, and I'm not a designer, where in between phase 1 and 2 where that dotted line is, looks like you could put another 15 parking spaces there. I don't know, but I'm not trying to second guess and tell you how to redesign the whole thing. That's the concern that I've been hearing from the neighbors, is that we don't want these people parking in our front yards.
How do you come up with 3.7 acres left over?
I'm sorry, 2.7.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I thought that
apologize.
was, okay.
Math
He cuts
is
his pieces
not,
smaller.
yeah.
Round in a square box.
No, I don't know,
Some of the
maybe
folks
that's a
got too much
question
also.
for our attorney
Yeah.
also.
Yeah. Would you like to weigh in on that, Scott?
2 things come to mind. First, we're in a quasi-judicial setting, so you have to have competent substantial evidence, and the law is pretty clear on what's competent. And there's traffic experts. So if we want to question the parking analysis, we actually need a traffic expert to come in and question it. Citizens can raise concerns, but they're not experts. The court won't allow a lay person to give an expert opinion. So I don't think we have competent evidence that there is any concern about parking, because we don't have a corollary or a competing traffic expert analysis that contradicts their expert analysis,
So
which I think we would need.
Do we require a traffic impact study on a project of this size?
Yes, they turned one in, right? Traffic impact and parking, right?
Right.
So that's been submitted in, or the traffic will come in. Secondly, if there's really concerns about parking off the site onto streets, we have the ability to control that through regulation. We can adopt parking restrictions. We can prohibit parking.
Oh, I know, I just don't want to start off with a bad relationship or towing all your people away, you know?
Well, no, but that will then make them have to address that issue. But if somebody's worried about the people parking in front of their house, that is something we can restrict. We can regulate on-street parking, parking in the parkage and stuff like that. So we have the ability to adopt other regulations. But I think if there's really a concern about inadequate parking, we need another expert opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, I
And
think,
Thank you for reminding me of that.
And I think Commissioner Penny too, because I'm kind of aligned with you right there. But if Phase 1 goes ahead and does this and there is a major parking problem, we could use tools to ticket people parking along 3rd Street or wherever they're not supposed to. And that's going to put the impetus on them for Phase 2 to make sure that they have that. Because the problem more so will be for them. They're going to get people complaining to them, hey, I can't come and visit my grandma, you know. And so I think that it would be addressed in Phase 2, I think. So, but if you wanted to address that, you can.
I think, again, we'd like to see where this goes. We have, various projects. I have a whole list of them, that we've turned in data. They've got the Madison Glen in Ormond Beach. That is a similar project. It's not the same height, but it is a senior 55-plus office stairhouse there. That data is used in the parking studies and things that we've provided. And, this is something that this developer and other similar developers have done all over the state of Florida. And in fact, this 0.8 number is actually higher than, most of the other sites that are 0.7, 0.75, correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there any other questions? Vice Mayor? Yep, come on up, just state your name and who you are for the record.
Stacy Bannock, American Residential Communities, 558 West New England, Winter Park. One thing I can shed a little light on here is the dry retention and wet retention ponds are over-designed currently. We do this just to make sure that, these are going to be the maximum capacity. We have a lot of room in here, if you look at the way it's designed, to manipulate additional parking spaces if needed. There's also, you guys are probably familiar with the underground stormwater that they have where you can build parking above it. There's a lot of opportunities that if for any reason just something crazy happened here that's never happened before and we have a parking access, we have a problem, which will come out during Phase 1, we'll have the opportunity in the Phase 2 land design to work through that. So, we're pretty confident with this that we're not going to have any problems, based on historical data of our parking. So.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Vice Mayor, you had a question?
Yes. What changed from 80 units to 86?
Again, the PD was set at 35 units per acre, and it was in the text. So at 35, we were actually at 189 at the last hearing. We had a site plan figure that had a conflict at 80. We talked about it, most likely being closer to 80 than the 189. And where we're at today is at, between 172 and 180. I'm sorry, between 172 and 160. That's essentially the difference in the 80 and 86 units. But again, it is still considerably lower.
So you don't know certain whether there's going to be 80 or 86. It just depends on, you can probably answer that, Stacy.
So this kind of came
Just
up.
name again
Stacy
for the
Bannock,
record. Thank you.
558
That's good.
West New England. Sorry. This kind of came up, from the last discussion. Originally this was planned to be 90-90, up to maximum of 90-90. The way our tax credits work, and we keep an eye on that, is you get tax credits based off of the units that you do, how much you request from tax credits, and you have to be careful with the Florida housing application process with a leveraging calculation. You don't want to do too few of units, so you have to be careful. And if tax credits change the pricing on it, you might have to do, instead of 80, 82 units. The 86 just gives us the flexibility that if it comes around in the next 1, 2, 3, or 4 years whenever we're applying, that if something changes in the tax credit world, it gives us that flexibility. I can tell you right now, we're planning on doing 80 units for the first phase, submitting, unless something just changes. So, and we talked about it today, and I was thinking, well, the city would probably be okay with, if we ended up doing 86, because they're getting more affordable units in the city. But we don't want to cause a problem either. I just want to let you know that we're just doing it for some flexibility that if that happens, but we're not planning on doing
To
it.
give you a better chance of getting funded, right?
Well, it gives us the opportunity that if something changes last minute with tax credit pricing and
Right.
so forth, it gives us that option to go a couple more units up, up or down. So we didn't want to lock ourselves in. But, if this was something that everyone's like, this isn't happening unless you cap it at 80, then we would cap it at 80.
said
But
that.
it just gives us that flexibility.
said
If the
that.
city doesn't mind having those additional
Someone
units
did
just
say
in
that.
case. That's all we wanted to.
Thank you, Stacy.
Hang on just a second. Mr. Forte, so whether it's 80 or 86 units, there's no change to the actual phase acreage of the building?
No, the building footprint is going to stay the same, the building height is going to same, and Stacy, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the number of units you put on the floor.
Correct. So this is, those buildings that you're looking at right there are designed off of 90 units.
Okay.
So all that's going to happen is it's just the footprint's going to reduce a little bit. These units are they're 24 by 24 for a one-bedroom. They're 24 by 36 and a half feet for a two-bedroom. They're almost modular in the sense that we can move them around, and our corridors are 6 feet wide, so they're double loaded. These things are very specific, so if we remove a few, we have a lot of room inside the building to move around. So this is the maximum at 90 units. The footprints will be a little bit smaller, which again would give us the opportunity to maybe build a little more parking, or we like to keep the open space personally.
I was just concerned we were diving into that open space, was my concern.
Sure. No,
And
we
that's
won't be.
why I said, I'm not going to vote for 86 units. But now that I've calmed down my passion, I can see that there's really not going to be a change there.
That's correct. Those are the 90 unit layouts you're looking
I
at.
get too passionate too quick sometimes.
Commissioner Penny, you wanted to add something?
One question. The parking was a direct relationship to the units, the 0.8. So if we were going to 86, you'd actually have to have 69 units each phase, if my math is correct. But-
Parking space.
Parking
said
space.
units, but that's-
Parking space is what I meant. But you've proposed 72 and 70, which is greater than that 0.8 ratio. Could we make a change to say that you will, no matter how many units, if you do 80 or 86, you're going to put 72 parking units? It's 3 more than you're supposed to. But that addresses, you understand what I'm saying?
Well, I think if we drop down to 86, we're only required to have 138 spaces by the 0.8 ratio.
Well, I'm just doing phase by phase, because the site plan says 72 parking spaces, phase 1, 70 parking spaces, phase 2.
Right, but I think 86 times 0.8 is less than 72, isn't it?
It's 69.
Right. So you're suggesting,
I'm suggesting that no matter how many units you build there, you put 72 parking spaces with phase 1. It would be 3 more than you would be required to, but it would address some of our non-experts' concerns.
yeah, I mean, honestly, I was envisioning this as, what we show on here is 72 and 70.
Right,
We're not gonna
I'm
go
not asking
less
you,
than that.
I'm not asking you to change it, but you could, trust the developer, okay? You could, if you build 80, you could then only be required to put 69
Oh, I see what you're saying.
units.
You're saying the PD agreement itself it says you, by the PD.
The PD
developer
says it's
agreement, we could
0.8.
do less.
You could do
Okay.
less.
So what you're asking is just, can we say, look, there won't be any more than.
There won't be any
anything
less than 72 and 70.
72 and 70. I mean, I don't have a problem putting that in there.
I mean, does that make sense?
But if it's something that later, that's fine. I was going to say if it came about and we built phase 1, it's like you have 30 empty parking spaces here all day long. We don't want you to build that many for phase 2. Then what do we have to do? Come back and get a PD agreement amendment, or I'm just saying if that's.
Well, you would have
Yeah.
to build 69 anyways.
You would-
So on phase 2, it's only
Yeah.
1 more parking space.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. If it's okay to change it at this time, are you allowed to?
Are you gonna have me like
Yep.
I'm crazy?
It's all negotiation.
No, we're talking a few spaces. I don't.
Yeah.
It doesn't. We don't.
So
mind.
we'll just add in that section where it says 0.8, but in no event less than 72 in phase 1 and 70 in phase 2.
Right, we're gonna talk 4 spaces. What we're
Yeah,
talking.
I don't have a problem with
At
that.
the end of the day, Stacy, you take your total parking spaces of the whole project, or you do 72 and 70? Or is it a combined that if phase 2 is built, it's a total number of parking spaces?
Well, the 0.8's based off of right now off total units.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So in phase 2, you may get down to what Commissioner Penny was alluding to. You may say, look, I got all these empty spaces. I want to drop down to the 0.8. total for the project. The first half may have 72, but the second one may have 68. You still have a total of 0.8 for the entire project, but if the demand shows you don't need all that parking, and based on the layout, what are you going to do? Have an empty spot without stripes for parking? It's probably going to be there anyway.
I know, but I'm just telling you, that makes a lot of.
You know, that whole area you pointed out above the pool area,
Right.
just to the east of the pool area, believe me, we originally laid it out with, we can get more spaces in there.
It'd be great if it was green.
But why put it, exactly, we want to put trees and landscaping, we
Right.
want to make this look nice.
Make it
So,
look good, yeah.
If the parking spaces aren't needed, we just don't want to put them, but,
No, I'm not asking you to put any more spaces in. I'm just saying, based on what you submitted, you're putting in 72 and 70, let's just put in 72 and 70.
Then why don't we also add this in there to give you some comfort, and we say that any amendment to that will be will be considered a minor amendment, approved administratively. So it doesn't have to go through the whole
For the
rezoning
parking.
process.
Right.
For parking. So, but it's not going to be less than 0.8. I mean, it would basically say, phase one will have a minimum of 72. Phase one will have a minimum of 72. Phase two will have a minimum of 70. But we have the provisions that be 0.8 overall. However, this can be amended as a minor, any amendment to this minimum requirements of parking spaces will be minor amendments, so that could be administratively approved. And then
And
you don't have
please
to go through this.
Feel free to take your time to think about this. We're,
Well, this is
it's a
actually
long
helps you,
haul,
so
so
you
we're
don't
not-
have to.
yeah.
A text amendment sometimes has to actually come back through this whole review process, and what I'm sensing is between the discussions is he's trying to provide some comfort level from citizens. Joe's trying to say, but what if they don't need it?
Yeah.
So let's just make it Joe's decision.
we're fine with that.
Yeah, instead of you having to come back to us and hear me and,
Yeah.
Maybe instead of the
Yeah, I'd be honest with you, you guys have been very pleasant, so.
well, thank you.
So
No,
it's
and
minimum of 72 and 70, but that can be adjusted administratively.
And I like your
Provided our
suggestion,
city manager.
Commissioner Penny. I like that.
Thanks for clarifying that. They keep saying Joe, and I don't know. You got 10 years on this. I may or may not be here.
Mr. Snapsnaller, do you want to take a moment to talk to him about it, or are you guys good with moving on from that? Okay, we'll move on from that. Commissioner Penny, were you done?
That was it. I just want to thank the applicant. The mayor alluded to listening at our last vote, and you guys listened to our suggestions, listened to our citizens, and we thank you for providing a bus shelter for our community. It's going to be a great project, so thank
All
you.
right. And are there any other questions before we move on to, is it a question?
No, it's a comment.
We'll hold it till
Okay.
the vote. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Just for the
Yep.
record, just Michael Schnapstaller, if there is an opportunity to address you all after public comment, happy to do that too.
Okay, if we have questions after all of the public comment is done, I'll allow you to come back up, okay? Thank you, Mr. Snapstaller. At this time, we'll open this up to public participation. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak about this item to the commission tonight? Yes, ma'am. Just once again, state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Camille Ingham, 334 and 336 Daytona Avenue. I'm going to read through all this real quick because I only have 5 minutes or whatever, but I do have a copy of all of my questions should anybody want that. I'm assuming we're looking at the version 7.1.f, packet page 648, that you guys are looking to sign tonight. On page 649, 3A, not 35 units per acre, that allows 94.5 units per building. 5.4 acres times 35 is 189, divided by 2, you're looking at 94.5. Do the math. Need to change to 30 units per acre. That would end up being 81 units. Obviously, with the latest conversations, we're trying to give them up to 85 or 86 now. So, there is also a notation in there that says, it mentions a lower level under residential floor parking. Where is there underground parking? 3J, 1 and 2, what's the visual screen requirements of the city's land development code? Back in 2006, we agreed on a 6-foot-high stucco masonry wall shall be constructed along any perimeter adjacent to residential single-family dwelling lots. A landscape buffer yard along the east side of the project site shall be a minimum of 10 feet wide, with 3 shade trees, 3 understory trees, and 30 bushes per 100 linear feet. This needs to include the 326 Daytona Avenue home that is currently zoned MPUD, it's not necessarily zoned single-family unit. Number 3J7, landscape maintenance. What are the details of the requirements for them? I know that's not in the preliminaries, but again, it's a valid question. 3J8, explain land uses allowed by this PUD, including as a secondary element, commercial land uses and customary accessory uses on page 650. What is that? 3J9, environmental. Numerous trees where the dry retention pond is planned. There are hawks and owls, etc., that live here. I'm requesting a tree line, the tree line that already exists on the property be maintained and minimal tree removal to limit disruption to nature. I'm not a tree hugger, but these woods have been here for a long time. There's a lot of nature that lives in those woods, and that needs to really be considered before we go in there and just tear everything down. Number 3J11, stormwater drainage. How deep is this dry retention pond going to be? And what is the plan for the overflow? On number 3J17, the phasing. Developer may grade and clear the road rights-of-way, easements, fire access, and stormwater management facilities prior to plat approval of the lots. Change this to occur after they've received approval to move forward with the project. The project has 9 years for completion. There's no need to clear the land until they're ready to build. That's on page 651. Phase 1 has 3 years. Phase 2 has 5 years plus 12 months extension plus 3-year extension is a total of 9 years. Page 631, the new drawing now shows 86 units max per building as verbally stated during the September 24th meeting by the legal counsel from Cobb Cole. He stood in this hallway here and he said that the original drawing showed 90 units per building. It was a typo. It was now 80. And that's what you guys agreed on. Now it's showing 86. Per the drawing, 86 units does not equal 80. As stated before, 70 parking spots per building. Of course, it's now 72 and 70. And we've all discussed that one too. You've got plus employees, plus visitors. There's just insufficient parking, which I know everybody's talking about addressing that. I'm not so sure I agree with it being a minor change. I really think that everybody needs to be involved in that, for phase 2, to make sure that it's covered. Because if we've got a problem with phase 1, we're going to have a bigger one with phase 2. And the walking trail that's noted around the dry retention pond, is it lighted? As we were discussing with the park, there were homeless people that have frequented this land for many years. You're going to start clearing that out. You're going to put park benches back there, I would assume, for seniors to do their walking trail. Guess what? You just now have a cleared out spot for homeless people. They're going to love that. I don't think the seniors living there are going to love that. I don't think the neighbors are going to like having a cleared out spot for them either. So we need to look at that as well. And then my biggest one is 3J25, the binding effect. You guys, until some changes are made to this PUD, I just don't think it's ready to be signed off yet. There are some changes that need to be made. And I want to stress, for the sake of your citizens that you're representing, the neighborhood, everything else, yes, we want to do this. I'm for it, but we need to do it right. So I'm asking you, please, just take our time with this and do it right. They want to build here. It's a good thing to have there, but please, let's take our time and do it right. And again, I have a copy of all of these if any of you would like to pick it apart.
Thank you, Ms. Ingham. Is there anyone else in the, yes, Heidi.
Hi, my name is Heidi Heller of 460 Ridgewood Avenue. I'd first like to say thank you very much to Mr. Rainey, Mr. Bernache, Mr. Law, and Mr. Snapshauser for considering us again, Holly Hill, to be part of their projects. There's plenty of places for them to choose around the country, as they have proven in their history of the 13 or so more other developments. I would like to say thanks again for considering the bus stop, as we talked about, and the dumpster modification. And I'd like to say thanks also to the public themselves for being willing to fund through the tax credits, the housing credits that the corporations will be able to use, and we've found enjoyment through the public funds for the fine grants and the ECHO grants. We'd like to mention, though, also that in some of the pictures that I've looked at in their developments, they do have what many would consider would be great landscaping around. It seems to match what we have in our median strip, and their buildings have the magnolia trees, which is a native plant. Looks like live oak trees, which are a native plant, and some of the palms. But I hope that they're aware of that there are more grants for native plant partnerships through the Florida Native Plant Society conservation grants and the Florida Wildlife Foundation, where they could use for the ground cover grant money and also beautify beautify the area also in a different way than we may be used to, but still it would save them on money also for water and conservation. I would also like to mention that there still is a possibility, under my naive way of looking, probably through the Florida Division of Emergency Management, that they may convert some of their building to a emergency shelter during hurricane. And that's the Florida Division of Emergency Management. They already have a special needs group of people that will be going to the apartment complex, so maybe they could have a special needs section or convert an area or convert something, and they would get the benefit, tax benefit from that also. That may be just totally out of line. I would like to also mention that senior housing doesn't necessarily mean 55 and over only. Senior housing is 80% 55 and over, where 20% could be from 17 to 55. So it may not be, and I don't see remember reading any provision that there was a requirement for actually 55 and over in all the units. And my disappointment in maybe this whole senior housing joining up partnership is single people, such as myself and Dave, who are not married, are not eligible for even going or using this facility, because there is a caveat that you're required to be married or past married. So that's my disappointment in here. But as far as overall this project, I appreciate the efforts that everybody has. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to the commission on this item tonight? Seeing none, I'll close public participation. Would the applicant like to address any of those questions?
Absolutely. For the record, Michael Schnapps-Tyler with Cobb Cole. As to the last comment about who can live in what units together, I think Mr. Bannock and the speaker could speak outside of this to help correct any misconceptions about who can live in what units. There is text in the PD that limits it to 55 and up, and then the applicant developer actually signs a land use agreement as part of their tax credit process that restricts the property to 55 and up as well. So those issues should all be addressed.
A quick question. Does that mean like because this happens a lot, grandparents take in their grandchildren, we know their parents aren't responsible and they have to take them in. Is there an exemption for that or no?
Stacy Bannock, 558 West New England. So I was inquiring about that because, I'm not in the day-to-day leasing, so I can't speak for all of it. But questions like that have come up, and we don't allow that because it's 55 and up.
Okay.
We get an exemption from paying school impact fees, and we have to be very careful with that.
Okay.
Our attorneys will look at each case scenario if that comes up, because you can't just say no by law, but in our overall lease agreements, it states that.
And so I'm also going to assume that a couple that may be 55 or older just living together, that may be a case-by-case basis also.
What do you mean as far as, so
They're not married, so.
I was
like-
going to,
Well, I'm curious.
I was asked this question before the last meeting, and it was actually incorrect information. I thought that they did have to be married. They don't have to be.
Okay.
So they don't have to be related to live in these, but
Okay.
we do have a cap in our lease that is two persons per bedroom.
Okay. I just was curious. I do talk to a lot of people about this project. I have not had any ex parte communication, but I do talk about the project. So that's why I'm curious, so that I give out the correct information.
Okay,
Yes, Commissioner Penny.
Just one question, and I know there's a recent law that was passed for ALFs that they have to be fully generator backup into. Any regulations like in a building like this?
Well, we're independent living. It's not assisted living.
Okay.
So I don't know if that,
Are there generator, I guess the question is, are there on-site generators to,
oh, yeah, we have a generator, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, and it powers at least one of our elevators.
okay, so it'll run
wow.
It's
the,
all fire code safety that you have to have this.
okay,
Would you like to continue?
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a couple points. With respect to trees, the last development agreement had a requirement for shade trees essentially every 30 feet or for every 100 lineal feet that there be 3. We're proposing 25, and then along the Ridgewood frontage, 12 and a half feet. So we think that this landscape plan is actually more robust. Your city attorney, your city manager can speak to it, but a lot of the boilerplate language at the end of the development agreement that was referenced earlier are kind of your standard terms and conditions and requirements. Of course, the applicant's going to comply with all environmental laws and rules and regulations. For some of you that know me and the work that I do outside of this, the environment is really important to me. I redevelop a lot of brownfields. They're going to comply with all environmental rules. And Mr. Walker can also speak to this, but again, where the development agreement does not speak to something specifically in your land development code applies. So you're not throwing out, your land development code. There's language in here that says that if, the agreement does not specify a term or condition, your land development code applies. There's some language in there about accessory uses and things like that. That's what allows the movie theater, the healthcare screening facilities, the staff areas to work with that make the development work as well. So I hope we've addressed as many of the questions as we can, and appreciate your consideration this evening.
Yep, Vice Mayor.
Now, I have to assume that this, what do you call it? A walking trail is not going to be, those trees and stuff that are towards the back of the property are pretty much, most of them are going to still remain there to create a buffer so your concerns, I believe, are this walking trail looks much further forward than where that would be a concern. And if we do have homeless in there, I hope Deputy Chief Miller heard about that and we get that taken care of real soon.
If you're homeless in there, we'll cite the property owner to get rid of them.
Well, I hope we get that taken care of soon, if there is a problem. So I just wanted to clarify that's going to be kind of forward, not back where the trees and all that is.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Penny?
Just, 2 points of clarification before the mayor asks for a motion and I make it. Are you okay with what we talked about, the parking changes that our attorney talked about? And you're also okay with changing the maximum density to 32 per acre?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any other questions?
So make a motion.
I will entertain a motion for approval, but you're going to have to state it, so.
I'd like to make a motion to approve with amending the maximum dwelling units per acre to 32, and also including the verbiage that Mr. Simpson gave us about minimum parking.
And I will second that motion.
Let's go ahead and repeat
Yeah.
that so that I can get it into the minutes.
Was that the
Minimum parking, it will stay, the minimum parking is a 0.8 per dwelling unit, but in no event will it be less than 72 parking spaces for parcel 1, 70 parking spaces for phase 1, 70 parking spaces for phase 2. However, a change to the 72 or 70 parking spaces will be deemed a minor amendment that can be approved administratively by staff.
is that correct? Commissioner Penny?
Oh, we're only going to let them change the 70 on phase 2.
2.
Okay, if you just want to say 70, but I was just saying they could change the,
I don't want them
they
to
can't be
change-
below .8.
Yeah, I don't like changing phase
I
1.
thought it
phase
was the
2.
cumulative of both
No.
parking requirements would not go less than the .8
Correct.
requirement.
But that won't kick in until phase 2, so we don't need to
Correct.
address
Okay,
it.
then
Right.
just
So
amend
72 is the
phase-
minimum for phase
and then
1.
phase 2 of 70 would be an administrative change.
72 is the minimum for phase 1.
And that will be billed.
Phase 2 may have 68,
That's
As long as it's above
long as it's
.8.
as long as it meets the .8.
Yes.
correct.
And that can be administratively approved.
Yeah, and that's basically what Scott said in that.
Well, he said, I interpreted it, you could administratively change the 72.
Yeah, no, not to 72.
Just the 70. okay.
Right.
So, just for clarification and to make Val's job easier, would you like to restate that or have our attorney restate that just 100% so I'm on board, we're all on the same page?
The minimum parking for the site shall be .8 parking spaces per dwelling unit. Phase 1 shall have a minimum of 72 parking spaces minimum. Phase 2 will have 70 parking I'm sorry, did I mess that up? No, that's right, 70 parking spaces minimum. However, staff can administratively amend Phase 2 70 parking spaces as long as the total parking for the site complies with the .8 parking requirement.
And,
that said-
and 32 units per acre?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay. Is that everything?
yes.
All right.
And I still second.
Okay. So we have a motion, we have a second, now discussion. Commissioner Penny, thank you very much. Vice
I've
Mayor,
had all the discussion
thank
I
you very
need.
much. Any discussion? Thank you very much. I too want to say thank you very much for choosing Holly Hill. I'm very excited about this. We need to provide more affordable housing, and thank you for choosing this area. And with that, we'll go ahead and call the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
All right. Now we're moving to communications. Mr. Forte.
Nothing from me.
Get out of here. Really? Can't think of anything? You always say something.
You have a few things, right?
I do?
No.
You.
Me?
No, I'm just asking.
No, I have that.
Oh, you have nothing for real?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh.
He always has something to say.
You always have
That's
something.
never happened. Wow.
Did I miss something?
He's late for dinner is what's happening. Scott doesn't have anything, but
No,
I'll ask you if you do.
This
No.
is us coming on.
All right.
Maybe Joe's starting to learn.
Well, John Penny always said the best part of being mayor is to be able to speak first and last. So I'm going to take that opportunity tonight. First and foremost, I want to address my commission tonight. I want to address something that actually bothered me greatly. I don't know if any of you read the newspaper, but after our last vote 2 weeks ago in the newspaper, I think it was the next day, I got a phone call from a reporter, asked me what happened. It was a short phone call. I told her what happened in regards to the millage rate. So a couple days later, I get a ping on my phone that I'm in the newspaper, and I read it, and it was so taken out of context that I needed to address it with y'all. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yes.
But so you've read it. So basically, it said that I was pressuring the city commission to bring down the millage rate. If you look at it, it made it seem like I was swooping in on a white horse to come save the day, and that's just not what happened. Everyone knows my stance on trying to lower the millage rate, how hard I fought to do it, and I was the one person to vote against it. But we all know that staff came before us, thank God, to find the error in the budget and to bring down the budget about $500,000. And so that was not on me. And if you read my quotes, I stated facts, I stated we, and it was taken out of context to make it seem like the mayor did something. So I wanted to address it because and then at that point, do I call the reporter back and ask her to take it down, which is never good practice? You can't just get them to take down something because you don't like it. So I lost sleep over this because of the way that it looked. But if you can go back, if you read my quotes, I quoted exactly what happened. I talked about how we did everything because this is a team effort. I'm a commissioner that gets to bang a gavel and run the meeting. And that's really what it is. So I didn't want it to come off as if it was like I was trying to take the credit, because that is not what happened. And, I think John Penny, and I'm sure Roy, you could attest to, when you are the mayor in the middle chair, when I was commissioner, I didn't get calls from the newspaper. I get calls from the media all the time. A lot of times I tell them, not going to give you a comment now. I told them the good news that we did work. We were one of the only cities to really work on our millage rate and bring it down from what we were at. And that's a good thing. That's a positive thing. I wanted to share that. I wanted to get that news out. But when it came out and it said I pressured this commission to do this, that was just such a wrong way to go about it. So, once again, I just want to apologize if anyone's feelings were hurt or if that happened. So I wanted to address that. And the only other thing that I had was remind you all about the chamber breakfast next Tuesday at 7:30. Looking forward to that. Bright and early. 7:15 as Val says, but I think it's actually 7:30. I think she does that so I'm on time. So with that, we're going to open it up to commission comment. Commissioner Johnson.
I'll get a chance to comment now. Yeah. Well, I did. I do read the newspaper, and I see a lot of things in it. Some things I like, some things I don't. Most of the bashing of the president. Sometimes I don't. But I did a little bit of research on taxes as well, and I think probably, by the way that I figured my calculations, I probably pay more property tax than any of us here in Holly Hill. And
Thank you.
We appreciate that.
Keep up the good work.
But the three of us, between the three of us, we pay quite a bit because we don't get the homestead exemption. But I calculated out, and best I could figure, by the difference between a 6.5 and a 6.25, I saved probably 1/10 of 1 month's payment from our property tax on that. Because most of it, when I got to analyze and figure it all out, most of it is the hospital, the school board, the county, and all the other taxes is not what little bit we pay, although we still pay quite a bit in property tax. It's not all just to the city of Holly Hill. There's so much of it goes for the county, the school board, and the hospital lowered theirs quite a bit, which I think the hospital authority is down real low because Halifax Hospital lowered theirs a lot. You know what I mean? But I do a lot of analyzing from a business point of view because I don't like to pay out a lot of money, but I do pay out a lot of money. But I try to get somebody else to pay it for me because I just hate so bad to spend it, you know what I mean? But there's no problem. I mean, the tax was 6.5. We got it lowered to 6.25. We all pretty well agreed on it. That's what we needed to do to make the budget balance out. We tried to balance it out. We thought we had to balance out at 6.5, but when our great finance director and city manager found that we had more money than we thought we had, we got to lower it. And so there's no problem. Everything went well. It came out well at the end, and the city of Holly Hill is still moving forward, and I'm very proud of the way it's going, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Penny.
A couple big events coming up. I know we'll have a meeting before now and then, but sign up for Trunk or Treat. Get in touch with Rose.
Do we all have to sign up individually? I mean,
You gotta
we always
sign up.
do
You
it.
need to let them know that you're coming, so
I did
they'll have a space for you. And then have a car show the day after. So if you want to be a vendor, you can set up your tent Friday night and leave it there Friday night and come do it all over again Saturday. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Mayor.
I'm glad you brought that up, Mayor, because I have the news article, and I just wanted to clear up some facts for the News Journal. So hopefully they're listening. First of all, you're right. The pressure thing was in there, and it rubbed me a little wrong, but that's okay. I'm glad you apologized. Thank you.
Those weren't my words.
And I'm not saying that any of these were your words, because I know how the News Journal can be. We did not really technically have a tax decrease. Rollback is 6.1, and for us to have a decrease, technically, we would have had to have gone to 6.1, but we still had a decrease from what we were at. So technically, they got that wrong. We didn't really
still
have
increased the
a
taxes.
decrease. Yes, we did.
And I didn't
It's all
I
semantics.
didn't say we didn't either.
And then, let's see. And we did, well, no, we didn't do anything. Finance found some mistakes within the budget for whatever reason, and that's how we were able to lower that tax rate. The items were still paid for that were budgeted originally. Everything that we did originally with the budget at 6.5 was able to be done because of our fantastic finance that found those mistakes, and that brought the money about. So this commission was only determined to do 6.5 to cover what we thought was operations until that was found. There was one quote that I need to know if you said it or not, because you're saying you didn't say I. It says, we're really doing more with less in this budget, Via said. I fought to get it down as far as I possibly could. This commission fought to get it down, Mr. Mayor. And I'm hoping they got that wrong too.
No, it's 100% right. Commissioner, if you want me to address it now, I will.
Okay, go ahead.
I did fight to get it down as far as I could. I went so far as to, Joe will tell you, how many hours have I spent with you in your office fighting with him to, not fighting, pressuring him to do this, to, same with the commission. 100%, I did.
Right.
Look at my quotes, reread them from an unbiased mind. I propose to you that you're coming at this from the wrong angle. As I stated, and I ask everyone to go read this, I did not say I pressured. I did not say I did this. I said I fought to get it down, and I did. I will always say that. I said we. When I said we found room in the budget, I'm speaking for the whole city, our staff, our commission,
staff was
everyone.
excellent.
One thing you have to remember is I, too, have an opinion up here. And I'm allowed to have an opinion of wanting lower taxes. I ran on it. I'm going to be that way. I'm going to be that this coming workshop. And, you know, I'm sorry that I'm taken aback because you're so upset about this. So I think really it's more of a personal thing.
Time out.
Go ahead.
I'm not upset. I just said I want to clear this up for the News Journal. I'm not upset. I just pointed out the one line and asked you if that was in fact what was said. I'm not upset. If I was upset, you saw upset earlier. You know my upset. You've seen my upset. That's not upset. I'm just wanting clarification is all I want, because
100% I said
every time I speak of this commission, every time I'm up here, every time I'm out talking to somebody, it is never I did anything. It's this commission, because that's truly the way I feel. I feel that to the core of my soul, because I think we have a fantastic commission right now.
And it feels to me the implication is that you're saying that I don't do that.
Don't read into what I'm saying.
Go back and watch any of my
Please
videos.
don't be like that reporter and read into what I'm saying.
Just look into any of my quotes that I have on all of my Facebook. It's always we. Look, it's a team effort.
I'm not
and look,
challenging
listen,
you,
we're
Mayor.
not up
I'm
here.
just asking you.
Now it's becoming a. All right, listen.
Okay, that's the end of my comments. Thank everybody for coming out tonight. Appreciate all your support. Thank you, sir.
We're not up here to agree on everything. Okay, but when
you feel like
things,
you're being bashed, I have no more to say about it.
when things happen, we do it as a commission. We do it as a whole. I will always say that this commission is moving forward, and that's the way things go. So, with that, is there any other further business?
Well, they've got.
Mr. Danio.
I'm not getting.
Oh, sorry. Commissioner
I
Danio?
was going to say, just to.
Don't say anything.
Just to shed some light on the News Journal, is we homeschooled our kids for 20 years, and one of the assignments my wife had for my kids was to pick out 2 errors in the News Journal 5 days a week, and they had no problem finding them. So don't put a lot of stock. It's
That's
the only
what I'm
game in town.
saying.
That's all I have to say about
Thank you.
Clarifying for the News Journal. I made that clear up front.
But other than that, the spirited debate is never a bad thing. Thanks for coming, everybody. See you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, Commissioner.
October's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Thanks.
Got my tie on.
Thank you. Any further business? With that, we are adjourned.